Hi, welcome back to Beyond Engaged. I'm Kai and I'm a Beyond Differences team board member. Today we talk about allyship. My understanding was that being an ally was advocating for and supporting a marginalized or oppressed group of people, but it is so much more than that. So we're going to all learn together by having one of our team board members answer a bunch of our questions. Chiqui has been actively learning about allyship on behalf of Beyond Differences. We want to recognize that Chiqui isn't the definitive authority on this subject, but she's definitely a lot further along in her journey, and we have a lot to learn from her. Chiqui, can you help us understand what being an ally means?
Yeah. Allyship it's basically when a person who has privilege uses that privilege to help or stand up for or create a platform for anyone who's lacking that privilege, and help them gain equality or, help lift the oppression that's on their shoulders. And allyship, it's not like a checklist. It's not do X, Y, and Z, and now here's your badge. Yay, you're officially an ally. It's a mentality, it's an attitude, it's something you wake up every day and you work for. It's something that is a constant, learning and unlearning. And when we're talking about allyship, I think there's a couple of important things to understand. The first one is intent versus impact. So a lot of times when microaggressions or even macroaggressions happen, people might say, oh, I'm not racist, I didn't mean to be racist, or kind of deflect a lot. And I think the best way I've heard it described is it's like if you step on someone's toe. Obviously you didn't mean to step on the person's toe, but that doesn't change the fact that you just stepped on their toe and now their toe hurts. If you stepped on someone's toe and they said, ow, you just stepped on my toe, your initial reaction wouldn't be to go, no, I didn't, or that shouldn't hurt. You would apologize because you just stepped on their toe. And yet when we come to microaggressions and, oppression or harmful things that we say, a lot of times people deflect and they say, that wasn't racist, I'm not racist, or that wasn't sexist, or whatever. And so it's really important to understand that it's not your intent that matters. You could have the best intentions and still hurt someone. It's what happens to them, the impact, that's important. Because if someone's hurt, it's your responsibility to apologize and to repair that harm and make it up to them. So I think that's a really important concept. And something else that's also important to look at is the bystander effect. And the bystander effect is like a social and psychological effect that when we see someone in need, if there's more people around, we're less likely to help them because maybe it's because we assume, oh, someone else will help them. Or, if no one else here is helping them, I'm sure they're not in that much danger or harm or whatnot. And it's really important to understand the bystander effect so we can overcome the bystander effect. Because if we see someone in need, our first response should be to help them because we can't guarantee that someone else is going to help them or that they're going to get the help they need. And when we let the bystander effect happen and take over us, then that person doesn't get the help they need. And now they're in even more harm and in even more pain and trouble because no one's helping them.
Chiqui, I have a question. Can anyone be an ally, or do you have to be part of a privileged group?
That's a great question, and I think it's really important to understand. So I think, yes, anyone can be an ally, and everyone has the responsibility to be an ally. But allyship does hinge on privilege, and I think this happens because we all have privilege in one way or another. There's a lot of different ways that privilege can come. It can be privilege because of your race, or because of your gender, or your sexual orientation, your religion, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, ability. So many different things can contribute to privilege. And so pretty much all of us have privilege in one form or another, which means that where we have privilege, we have the opportunity to help someone else. And privilege is not, oh, you've never struggled, you've never had anything wrong in your life, or you've never faced any hardships, because again, we can have privilege and experience discrimination at the same time. I'm white, and so I have white privilege that I get to benefit from every day, but I'm also gay, and so I experience discrimination because of my own sexuality as well, and it happens simultaneously. But we have to recognize our privilege because it's there. And when it is there, it means that we have the opportunity to be an ally and help someone else.
What if you aren't able to or not willing to go to a Black Lives Matter demonstration? Is it still possible to be an ally?
That's another great question. And it's another thing that's really important to understand. So of course, going to a Black Lives Matter protest is a really great way to be an ally. But obviously, we're not all able to do that. Sometimes with school or work starting up again, and with Corona and everything that's been going on, it can be difficult. And we're not all in that situation. But it's not the only way to be an ally. There's a lot of different ways to be an ally. Standing up for others when you see something harmful being said, or having conversations about race and gender and sexual orientation and all of these different categories, you know, in your own life with the people around you. It can just be learning on your own and listening to the experiences of marginalized communities. And we all have different skills, and we all have skills to bring to the table. You know, some of us are protesters, and that's what we're really good at. But some of us aren't protesters, yet we still have a lot of other things that we can bring. And I think the thing that makes movements really great is when we all get together and contribute the best part of ourselves to that movement. So if you're not a protest person, it doesn't mean you can't be an ally. There's still a lot of other ways that you can contribute yourself and help the movement.
So what are some things that you can say or do in a situation when you are a bystander or impacted by the bystander effect?
Yeah. So I think we all have moments where we see something happen and we know that it's wrong, but we don't know exactly what to say, or we feel like we're not prepared or equipped to deal with the situation. And then by the time we think we're going to say something, the moment is past, and then, you know, we're regretful. Oh, I wish I could have said something. And I know that's happened to me so many times. I think the best thing we can do is know that, you know, one thing is to practice and to even role play situations, or just, you know, say to yourself, if I hear this, what am I going to say? How can I react? And how can I be an ally in that moment, or an upstander? But obviously we're not always going to be prepared. And I think sometimes we just have to accept that fact. And when we do have privilege, you know, our uncomfort doesn't really matter, I think. It's much more important to be helping people who are being hurt or targeted in that moment than for us to be a little bit uncomfortable. And so I think sometimes we just have to step in, even if we're not 100%, you know, prepared. And sometimes we can just say, you know, hey, what you just said is harmful, and I don't think that's okay. Let's have a conversation about this, you know, and open up and admit, like, I'm not an expert on this. I might not have the perfect words, but I know that that wasn't cool. And, you know, open up a discourse and a conversation. And I think really just trying to call stuff out as much as we can and stand up, because even though it might be hard for us to do so, it's even harder for the person who's being targeted when they have no one standing behind them.
So I've heard the term performative allyship used a lot, but I'm not really sure entirely what that looks like. So what does it really mean to be a performative ally?
Yeah. So performative allyship is when someone is doing something, you know, in the claims of being an ally, but really they're just centering themselves, and it's so that they can signal their own virtue and say, look at me, I'm a good ally, rather than actually help the marginalized community that they're trying to reach out to. And so I think with performative allyship, we really have to look at our actions. You know, what is this action actually doing? Am I helping, you know, the community that I'm trying to help? Am I educating people or making a difference with this action? Or is it just for my own, you know, well-being or for my own sake? And really, you know, question ourselves whenever we do things.
Great. So if you're in middle school, how can you practice allyship?
So I think allyship, especially when you're young, it's not necessarily this huge thing. You know, I think it can be as simple as standing up for other people and saying, you know, when someone says something offensive, that's not okay. You can't do that. Or when someone else calls another person out, standing behind them. If someone says, hey, you just hurt me, standing with that person and saying, yeah, you just hurt this person, and letting them know that you have their back. Or even when you get called out, rather than getting so defensive, you know, apologizing and trying to understand and learn. And learning is a big part of it. I think it's just learn as much as you can and listen to other people's stories, be empathetic. It doesn't have to be this big thing, but just kind of changing your attitude and slowly bringing in these conversations into your life and standing up for other people.
Let's recap how we can practice allyship.
I think the first thing that's really important to being an ally is understanding our privilege and recognizing it. You know, if we don't recognize our privilege, how can we use that privilege to create a platform and help the marginalized communities that we're trying to help?
My tip is to listen and learn. If you aren't willing to listen, then you're not able to learn. You know, I'd suggest going on social media and look up things in your community, you know, different actions that you can take, and just familiarize yourself with different problems you can help with, and just educate yourself on.
So another thing that I think is really important when it comes to allyship is speaking up and not speaking over. So being an ally often is about using your privilege to lift voices of people you're trying to be an ally for. So this is about like not taking credit for things that people are already saying, and not speaking up or being an ally just to lift your own platform.
Another thing that I think is really important is owning your mistakes. We have to remember that it's not about your intent, but it's about the impact that you make.
saying that you're an ally is not enough. It doesn't make a huge impact if all you're doing is talking about how you're an ally. It makes the biggest impact when you're taking action and you're doing work, both to educate yourself, educate your circle, the people around you, and it's also about going into your community and going out into the world and putting into action the words that you're saying.
Allyship takes practice, it takes learning, and it's a lifelong commitment. Thank you, Chiqui, for answering all our questions, and thank you so much, guys, for being here. You're all awesome. Let's keep learning. Bye, everyone.